So Jeff, I saw right quick. So your name is Jeff, correct? Because on LinkedIn there's a different name.
No, so my real name is Jean-François. That's my
Okay,
that's the born
Jean-François.
with
Jeff.
exactly. But everybody calls me Jeff because it's obviously more easier for everybody.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. I just wanted to make sure because I was like,
So
I don't want
you
to.
can call me Jean-François, you can call me Jeff. That works.
Okay. All right. Cool.
If you
Well,
want to look fancy, though, you want to call me Jean-François.
Jean-François. It's cool.
Yeah, so that's you can pretend you speak a little French.
Well, yeah, we're gonna talk about trying to get the players to sign to the union in a little bit. But where have you played? What countries?
So yeah, I started with the junior team here in France, and actually the first team I signed up for was Toulouse, which was now in first in third division in France.
Mhm.
But I played there 1 year. I was 18 years old, and after a year, the club went bankrupt, so I had to move. And I ended up playing in Montpellier, and then after that, I left, played basketball in college in the US for a year. Then came back to France and started my career there. I played mainly in third division, second division, a bit, and then I stopped in like so-called professional basketball in 2009. Started to go to law school and signed up for an internship with the Player Association, and then stay there for pretty much 10 years.
We on the phone call today. We definitely want to talk a little bit about just what you've learned far as being a part of the union. Really want to talk more about player accountability. Truthfully, not so much what the unions aren't doing. What are they doing? Of course, we'll dabble into it, but want to tap into just that player accountability piece because you've seen both sides of being a player and then knowing what the unions are actually trying to do from an internal side, which we sometimes just don't see. So let's have that open conversation for
Yeah,
the phone call
to be
for.
fair, yeah, to be fair, I was lucky enough to see both sides. I was a national player in my home country, and then I was a foreign guy in a foreign country, and then I ended up helping out a lot of American players I was playing with during my professional career, who became friends and more than just teammates, because I used to like take them to the bank and help them with their paperwork and all kinds of stuff like that. And I think like there is at least one local, when you're foreign guys, who's going to help you out, solve out all the administrative issues. And then I was lucky enough to work for the Player Association for 10 years, and then I've done that again for more players, not the one on my team, but all the players currently or at the time playing in France. So I recognize that it's not really an issue, but there is a lack of understanding from a foreign guy coming into a country of what the player association can do. And if there is a player association, I think that's the discussion we had last time. The landscape, especially in Europe, it's so complex that it's really hard to understand where you are, which division you're playing, if it's professional, not semi-professional, if there is a union, if there is a league, if there is a federation. So the landscape is complex. And at the same time, you know that you're going to be here for your performances and you're going to be judged only on your performances. So why in the hell do you want to be involved with the player association where when you don't know if tomorrow you're not going to be fired or terminated? So to me, that was the main challenge when I was working for the player association, because you have to deal with like local guys who've been here long enough and understand the politics and understand what's going on, the issues that are arising on the reason. And at the same time, you have to deal with American players who have been here 2 weeks, and they need to understand why the union is, what the union is about, and if what's the player association compared to their agent. And sometimes it's not easy because they most of the time don't come from a background where trade unionism is something really strong around their entourage and their family. And most of the time, you are educating them on what is a player association rather than the hot topic of the moment. So you're not losing time, but you're building knowledge around what the player association can do. And that's what I've tried to do. I mean, most of my time when I was traveling to teams, because I would easily lose 20 minutes explaining a player why a player association is important and what are the benefit of it. But for the other guys, like the 6 or 7 other guys who've been here already a year or 2 years, or well, French, for instance, well, it's a lost 20 minutes. So that's the main challenge, to be fair. And but we can definitely overcome those barriers if in my opinion, the player association are working more closely together and figuring out a way to speak more with the foreign guys.
Right. I know. I mean, for me, truthfully, it's just, I mean, in France, it's a totally different world when you talk about the union. Like, we're talking like totally different world. But there are countries where unions exist, but I haven't interacted with anyone. No one's ever, I haven't seen anything. And I think that's where it's just, are the unions going where the players are? Maybe, are they providing the information and through the channels that we interact on as players where we are? Of course, we evolve one of those channels that we're trying to create where they can streamline information directly to us compared to going through the smoke of Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. But I don't know about you, Lo. Like, far as what's your initial thought on unions in general from your playing experience?
I definitely think it's important. When I played, I didn't know anything about a players union. I didn't learn about that until being with Julian, and when he was in France, that's when I learned about it, and I'm still learning more. But in Romania, I didn't know anything about a players union. In Serbia, I definitely didn't know anything about a players union. You know what I'm saying? But I don't even, when we were in Germany, I still didn't know about that. So like you said, France is just a culture and world of its own, because that's when I really learned about the whole union. And then speaking with other players, my knowledge grew, but I'm still learning because I think it's necessary for, us to stick together and have the connections that we have grow the union. But yeah, as a player myself, I didn't know anything about that. And it was definitely needed.
First of all, there is no player association in every EU country. That's the first problem, because when you're going to walk in out of the airport, you don't know the environment you're going to end up in. So you're talking about Romania. There is a player association, but that's for football players. But there is nothing for basketball player, because at the beginning of the history of the union, he has to start with a player fighting for his own rights. And what I told Jori the other day when we spoke together is that the player in Germany, the funny story is that the player association was set up by an American player. So when you look at the history of the union there, he was an American player who started a player association. And he's a good friend of mine. He played basketball in Europe for long. He played in Germany, he played in Spain, he played in France, but he stayed in Germany most of his career. He played in NBA as well for the Utah Jazz. His name is Walter Palmer, and he was the guy who set up the union on behalf of the locals. And that's a fantastic story. And he had to convince guys in Germany that they needed to join the union. German guys, like, let's do this, guys. Let's start a player association. So they were successful. They had a court case where the league was trying to undermine the capacity of the union to negotiate on behalf of the player. And then he stayed for a little bit, and then he moved on to other position, and he got an opportunity to work for a bigger trade union at the world level. So he moved on. and then the association continued after that. But then it's just also the question of resources, what you have, and the people willing to work. You're talking about, Jori, about traveling to the teams, meeting with the player. I can tell you from my own experience working 10 years for the union, I spent probably most of my year sleeping in hotel rooms than in my own place, because I was traveling so much. It's if you look at the number of teams, it's like 30 something teams with a male professional player, and an extra like 18, 20 teams with the female players. And then you have lower divisions who you also have foreigners. They are like semi-pro, some of them are professional. So if you look at the schedule, when you're trying to organize your team visit at the beginning of the season, that is just, in between the 1st of August and the 1st of December, you're not going to be home very much. And but that's what it takes. It was my responsibility as the director of the union to travel and meet all the guys, and that's how you create the connection with them. It's not just staying in your office and figuring out something that you could do behind a desk. A great example, for instance, just for everybody watching this podcast, if you've played in Italy and you had a professional contract, if you're a male player, you're eligible to collect some money from the fundo. So the fundo, I don't know if you guys know about it, but that's basically a fund available where the clubs end up putting some money in that you can collect at the end of their career. A lengthy discussion with the player association, GIBA in Italy, saying, well, guys, just disclose the list of players who are eligible and we'll do some research. We'll help you out with the names. Maybe some guys, they're in France now, or they have been in France, we've been in touch, they've been members of our union. We have emails, the phone number, we can reach out to them and figure out if they can get that money, if they just fill the form in. And finally, after like some long discussion, they've been able to disclose the list. And all of a sudden, we have in our membership like 15 guys who are eligible, who had no idea they could collect the money and were eligible to collect it. So all of a sudden, I'm filling out form in Italians to make sure that they get their money. So you had Tony Dobbins, who's now an assistant coach for the Boston Celtics in the NBA. He was playing for Pau at the time, and he was able to collect that money. His money, it was probably around like 30,000 euro, which is like pays for your vacation. And you have Chris Massey, who was playing for Limoges. He had no idea, and he collected like pretty much 50,000. So that's also part of the work that the union can do in between like them together. But it was me like pushing really, really hard and say, well, guys, there's too much money that is being lost by the player. And actually the issue was that the union was in Italy was subject to heavy attacks from the employer saying, well, look at the amount of money left on the fundo that are not being used by the player because you don't track them. And the employer, they say, well, let's just cut the fundo. We don't give any money anymore, and we leave just we pay the salaries, and there is no fundo. And it's a big loss for the player if they start doing that. So it was in everybody's interest to be able to find the guys, find their email address. I even found guys in Belgium that, they were not member of my union, but through like connection players and so on, I've been able to track the guys and get them a paycheck that they didn't even expect it.
Right. And this is for the men. When we talk about Italy, I believe Spain is still fighting for women to actually be professional. Greece, women are not professional. I don't even know how many players understand that they're not professional. And that, again, the local players here understand this is a big issue. They get no pension. It's different for us, them and us as imports, what we're coming here to do and take our money. And maybe we have our own accounts and retirement things set up through, stateside back home. But France, to my knowledge, I know the women are professional, but are there other countries that you know of that the women are actually professional? I think China, they're actually professional, of course.
Australia as well.
Australia, they just did a new CBA agreement about 2 years ago.
Exactly. But in France, they are professional, but there is no CBA. There is for the women player, there is a national CBA that is applicable for any other athletes or person working as an athlete. So it can be a football player, like female football player, female basketball player, tennis player, for instance. But the only women collective agreement currently existing in France is for the handball player, and it has been signed about a year ago now. So that's a great step forward, because the employers, the players were really proactive in signing an agreement, and it covers all the areas outside of salaries, but like pension, insurance, maternity leaves, and all the issue related to women's sport, which is fantastic. And it's the first time it has been done. I know now the player association here in France for basketball, they're working on the collective agreement, but I think there is a strong, I will not say opposition, but there is less will from the federation to engage in the discussion that would put some pressure on the clubs to apply certain rules, and also to put some pressure on the federation to, register the contract and make sure there are rights and so on. So the negotiation have been ongoing. It was my last big project before I left the union. I convinced some women players to be involved and to start engaging other players, and we've done team visits at the time. It was not to encourage the women players to sign up for the union. It was not to convince them they had to be a member of the union. It was just to say, well, guys, take your future in your own hands, and there is something you can do. There is a momentum there. Just go and don't be happy just because you're a professional basketball player and you're paid to play basketball, but just there are rules, and you deserve things, and you're putting your health on the line every weekend or every day of the week. And you should be respected for that. So they've been working on something. I don't know where they are right now. Hopefully they'll get something done before the Olympics. And the Olympics puts also a lot of pressure on the states to do something, especially in the field of women's sport. But it's a fantastic opportunity right now. And I just saw yesterday the European Commission released a work plan and guidelines for women's sport in Europe. And I think collective bargaining and the representation of women players is also in that document. So he put some pressure on the member states on the sport movement to do something, because it's a recommendation from the European Commission. So yeah, it's there, but you need to find this one player who's willing to not put his career at risk, but will take the lead, who have an influence over the others. And who have the time also to understand the bigger picture than just going to the gym every morning, going to the kine, doing some weightlifting, going back, taking a nap, going back to practice. Just say well, I'm going to look at my time, not to help myself, because most of the time when you engage yourself in the player association movement, you will not see the benefit of what you're doing right now. The benefit will be for other coming after you. And that's sometimes the reason why it's so complicated to have the player involved. And and you have to also understand that small wins are also great, and you cannot get everything right from the start. And it will start with some minor stuff, and minor stuff leads to other stuff.
Right. What are some, if you just get some key steps? Again, we started our own petition. We're passing it around. We didn't go to the union. We were just you know what, we're gonna do something. And at least if we get 1,000 signatures, that shows something that we can go to the table with. Did we follow protocol? I don't know. We just did basic protocol when someone says, let's do something. But what are some things that players could do? What are the starting steps for a player to say, hey, we know something needs to be done? I've heard of a number of guys throughout my journey with Evolve say, oh, this guy wanted to start an import player union. For the life of me, I've been asking these big time dudes, send me their number, please. I need to get on the call. Where they at? If you are a leader in the union, I would think I would know you. I would think you would be out there. I would be able to pinpoint you in the community. That's my thought. That's my own personal opinion. If you say you for the community, everybody in the community need to be trying to see you. Especially if you got 20K followers. I understand if you don't know me. I don't have that many followers. But some of the names that have been thrown around saying that they're starting things, that should go viral. Yeah. So what's the first steps to kind of take action.
I think that there is an easy place to complain. And the easy place to complain is FIBA, because within FIBA, there is an athlete commission. Those guys, they are not elected. They are just like proposed by their own federations to sit at the table around with FIBA. And if there is an athlete commission, at least they should report to FIBA what's going on and what the problems are. Right now, and the commission has been working for a pretty pretty long period, and I haven't seen anything coming out of the work the athletes commission there. Athletes commission, by the way, is just a way for federation to say they are doing collective bargaining, because that's their player. They pick the player. Those players, they maybe have a will to stay in the sport movement and working as a player in the player commission and athletes commission within an international federation. It's a great opportunity for you to make your way up in the Olympic movement. But those guys, they are accountable. They are former athletes themselves, so they should be, harassed. And I will say that in purpose, harassed by the player, like questions. Ask questions about what's the situation in my country, what you guys can do. There is the bat. Obviously, the bat helps a lot of players, but if you don't make enough money, you don't have the capacity to go to bat and claim your money back. That's an issue, and that's an issue that needs to be raised.
Yeah, I think we should create a fund. One of the things I think should be created is a fund where, let's say the guy you said that left his money on the table in Italy was $30,000. He don't need that money. He's an NBA coach. What if that money went to the fund that now those guys making $800 a month who want to go to bat, that fund helps them go to bat, and we know what they're going to win. So we just keep taking the reward money, putting it back to the fund. Like, how do, those are things that's like, okay, how do we make that happen? It's great ideas. How do we make that happen? But yeah, definitely the FIBA commission. We know Dirk Nowitzki, right, is the head now.
I don't know if it's the head, but there is. I think Pau Gasol is in the commission now, but I think Pau probably has some really political interest later on with his career. But that's. I mean, I cannot talk for him. I think he's a fantastic player, but I don't know what his future look like. But maybe within FIBA there is a chance for him to do something. There are some less. So basically, the FIBA Commission represents athletes from all around the world. So you have FIBA Africa nominating one, FIBA America nominating one, Europe, and so on. So I think the total number is around 10 or 12. They are both male and female. But I mean, as part of my job now, I've been asked by a basketball agent to review like some of the stuff that he was doing, his contract with this player, and actually, he asked me to have a look and watch the FIBA online seminar on the new agent regulation. So I unfortunately had to look. I mean, I have to watch the whole thing. And at the beginning of the conference, like the web conference, they say, "Well, we spoke to all the stakeholders." And I'm like, "Okay, who's that? Like, which one? Agents? Like, you haven't talked to all the agents for sure. Players, you spoke to the athletes commission at FIBA. I'm sorry, but it's not the players. It's some of the players, maybe.
Right.
But
and they are the big name players that don't have the same problems as the majority.
Exactly.
Of the,
and they haven't spoken. They haven't spoken to the player association in any of the countries. So what I've done, I texted my friend with the Italian player association, and I say, "Hey, Alessandro, by the way, have you heard about FIBA asking you a question about whether or not they should change the regulation on agent?" And obviously for players, the regulation on agent is quite important, especially when the new regulation says that the player, they have to pay their agent, not clubs. Otherwise, there is a conflict of interest. So if the International Federation changes the regulation and put the responsibility of paying the agents on the player, then at least the player, they should be able to say something.
Right.
So I think, I mean, for all the guys listening or watching the podcast, well, just go ahead and hammer the guys, like send them emails. There is an email address where you can send requests to the FIBA Athletes Commission. So start hammering the guys. And because they know, they have to know what's going on in second division Romania with the women players. And FIBA, they need to put their act together to make sure that they are protecting the interest of the player, which is not something that they are good at. I mean, it's a commercial entity. Their only goal is to make money and put money in the national federation. Is not to help the player. They have no interest in doing that at all. Even if they are pretending they do so, that's not true. So I'm sorry, I'm pretty blunt right now, but that's the situation. I mean, sometimes you just have to talk about your own interest. You have to get together to get organized, because otherwise you won't get anything done. So yeah, there are some lines and some strings that you can pull. I think FIBA is one. A great example from my personal history with the union. I think when was that? European Championship, I think 2015 or 2016, and I got a call from the guys from the French national team that I've met like 3 or 4 weeks before the tournament, and they said, "Well, Jeff, we have a problem with the basketballs." Obviously, it's also a problem when you're a basketball player, because they changed the balls and now we cannot shoot anymore, and they are really slippery, and it's a mess. So can we do something about it? I said, well, let's just organize something. So through the network and the connection, I contacted some like captain of national team that I knew who played in France, or guy from foreign countries who played in France. And I said, well, guys, do you have the same problem than the French national team with the basketballs? So what we've done, and that was funny, we put this press release all together, signed by all the captain, saying, well, they disagree with the changing of the ball. And FIBA, they were really pissed, like FIBA Europe at the time. They were really pissed because it was signed by, I think we managed to get like 12 out of 16 countries signing from something that came from the player association. And they had to change the ball because the player was not happy with it. So if you organize yourself, if you find the right tool to use, then you can achieve a lot of things. I know for an American player coming in Europe for the first time, I know it's a concept because how can this will affect your playing career? I totally get that. And probably it will not, because you will never play for the national team. But it shows that all together and collectively, the players, they have the power. And you cannot do anything without the players, basically.
That's true.
Definitely.
That basketball issue just happened here in Spain, actually. They just got some new basketballs halfway during the season, and a couple of teams are still making up games because of COVID. So they didn't want to use the new basketballs. So the league is like telling everybody, like, don't use the new basketballs in the games coming up, stuff like that. And my husband's team was having that same issue. Like, should we use the new basketball? Should we not use the new basketballs? And it's just like, just use them, because you're going to have to play with them eventually. So why not practice with them, But because of games and all that, it was a big ruckus over the basketballs.
I wanted to get some stories out of you around, I know you said you had to chase down a lot of players, but just to give, because I think sometimes we don't have like clear examples of where the union has helped players, like I think that's one thing the union page could really not reveal names and maybe just give examples of like, this is how the union came through. Players don't think we're helping. Well, this is what we just did. Maybe, sharing more of those small wins, as you said, for players to know, like the more players that come on board, the more powerful.
Obviously, I have plenty of story to tell, spending 10 years with the player association. Yeah. And I would say that the work with the player is different depending on their nationalities, because that most of the time, the foreign guys, the reason why they're going to call you is because they're going to get fired. And I'm not working for the union anymore, but I have a great example from yesterday, actually, because I was called for a guy from the basketball player from Croatia called me. He's playing in first division in France right now. And there is this rule where you can collect unemployment rights, but you have to be working six months in the country in order to do so. And the guy is at 5.5 months. So he called me and he said, well, what can I do? And can I get that money at some point? So I explained him the whole thing, the type of negotiation he should have with his club. And and then he sits down with the sports director of the club and the general manager, and then he said, "Well, I agree on the buyout for the rest of the contract. The only thing I'm asking is that you continue my contract until the beginning of April. Then it will allow me to get my unemployment money." And then he said, the two guys, they looked at each other and they were like, "How did he know that?" So so it was, I mean, and then it was just a question of number and agreeing on a certain amount for the buyout. But basically, because he knew, I think he called me, not that I know everything, but he called me, I advised him, they negotiated, and now he's going to get his money. He's going to get terminated, which is fine with him. He's not going to get another job because of the war and everything, and the all of the player in the market right now. So it's really crazy time to try to find a job, and at the same time we'll be able to collect his unemployment rights. So that it's just an example from yesterday, but example from back in the days when I've done it's pretty, I don't know how many team visits over the years, but I remember like a couple of them specifically where the example that you gave, I was in Orléans first division back in the day, and this American player, I spoke about the union, and he looked at me and he said, "Well, you know what, player union, whatever." And I said, "Well, that's fine with me. I mean, I travel to the team, explain you the whole story, tell you exactly what we're doing, negotiating the collective agreement, having minimum standard for the players, insurance money, pension, disability money as well. Well, that's fine with me. If you don't want to join the union, that's fair enough. At least there is one. But now the rule with the union that we put it in place was that if after the team visit, we give you 2 weeks. If within the next 2 weeks you don't pay your membership dues, then you're by yourself, basically. Which is fair, because it's not fair for a player to sign up with the union right from the start of the season, and then for another one just to give you a call when he needs some help, because he's going to get free counseling, potentially free lawyer, and so on.
Right.
So the guy said, player union, whatever. I said, that's fine. I mean, I respect your opinion. Not everybody can be a union member, and that's fine. 2 weeks later, the guy got fired, and guess who he called first? He called me, and he said, "Well, I need your help. I'm being fired. They asked me to run at the track every morning at 8, and I don't know if they can do that, blah, blah, blah." Typical stuff when you're trying to fire an American player. And I said, "Well, you remember what you told me 2 weeks ago? You said player union, whatever. And now I'm the first one you're calling to get some help. So I'm like, whatever to you now, and deal with your own stuff. You have an agent, it will help you. I ran that to the board first, because I was not decided. It was the player who was decided at the time what we should do with individuals who came up late. But they stick to their plan and they say, no, you deal with it. And then his agent, because he's obviously paid by the club, negotiated a really bad deal for the guys, and then he left with pretty much no money, when you know that the French legal system is really protective for employees. So that's one example. I have another with an American player who got terminated by his club, and at the time we were organizing an unemployed player camp during the season. So because he was fired, we just said, well, if you want to practice with the unemployed player team, then that's fine. We will have a game in Orléans again. We're going to play a match. You're going to be able to practice 3 or 4 times with the team. And then they try to use that as an excuse to fire him for good cause. We went to court and we won, and he won all his money. At the end, it took some time, but won all his money. And then from a lower division, and I think it was 2016, probably something like that, around Christmas, the American player got fired around Christmas. He was supposed to come back, but the club said, no, don't. We are not going to buy you your ticket. So you're back home, you're stuck, you don't know what to do. So the guy called me, and I remember I was like Christmas Eve, I was with my family spending Christmas. I was talking to him on the phone saying, well, just like, if the club don't want to pay, just pay for your own ticket, fly back to France, and be there tomorrow for when practice starts again. And the guy trusted me enough. He bought his ticket, and as soon as he bought his ticket, then the club he sent a confirmation of the ticket to the club, and they were like, "Oh, we're screwed." So they had to fire him. So they fired him on the spot. We sued them and we won. I mean, obviously we won the case because there was no valid reason for them to fire him. But yeah, that's the type of situation and cases that I've been dealing with. And most of the time, yeah, it was American player being fired, American player not knowing the rules, their agent, undermining the consequences and say, well, that's common practice that you should accept like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months of salary, when the law is not like that in France. I mean, when you have a sports contract, you're entitled to your salary until the end of it. You don't have to negotiate. If they want to fire you or if they want to give you a buyout, they have to give you all your money. And that was the main thing I was telling the players when I was doing the team visit. Say, guys, there is a law. Sometimes your agent is not in their best interest to make sure that they follow the law to help you out. But we are here to make sure that we're gonna
Right.
be supportive and tell you exactly what's good for you.
Right. How many, I mean, again, we know you brought up the new FIBA agent rules. But it's clear the teams pay the agents. But when it comes to the best interest of the player, from your history, have you ever seen or known of an agent doing anything to help or increase the well-being for players? Because agents know so much. They know more. They know a lot that they could see to say, oh, this isn't right. But for me, I've always wondered, like, if the agents always say we're for the players, like, it's the federation fault, it's FIBA. Agents love to say FIBA's the mafia, it's not us. Yet I haven't seen an agent be at the forefront of trying to make change or anything. And so, from your time in your history, have you ever seen an agent step up in any way? And then what has been your experience with agents that players aren't really seeing clearly?
I think, in my opinion, agents, they are important because they are doing a totally different role than what the player association is doing. Then is the question of how your agent works. And I've been insulted by an agent once after the final of the French championship one year because one guy was being fired by his team. And for the court case, the agent testified against his own player for the club. And the guy came to me afterward and he was like shouting and screaming. And he was like, yeah, you're just a bad person saying that I testify against my own player. And I said, well, I'm not saying that. That's the document that was sent to court. So I'm not disclosing any private information. And that's your responsibility. Yeah, it's public. If you feel like you can testify against your own player when you made your living out of this guy, then that's up to you. So as a person, I will never respect you for that, because if you're a player agent, then you defend your players. You don't defend your clubs. But if you say I'm a club agent, that's fine. We know where you stand. So the guy was just all red, and he said he insulted me, and he said I'm gonna break the union down, and you're gonna burn in flame, and it was all crazy. It was just like the people around were just like, "What's wrong with this guy?" And I was like, well, he didn't help this player. At the end, we won the case. It was a big win for the player at the time. What's his name again? I'll come back to me. But yeah, you have this type of agent who are not willing to help their player. But on the other hand, you have other type of agents who recognize that they are being paid by the club and would tell their player, well, just go and work with the player association because I cannot help you, because I will put my relationship at risk if I do too much or if I defend your interest too much. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and that's my personal opinion, American player, when they are playing in Europe, I don't think they should have an American agent as well. Because right now, this is how it works. You have a European agent signing partnerships with American agents. And then they are splitting the deal, like the deal in half. So half for the American agent, half for the European agent. But down the road, when you're playing and you have a 10-year career in Europe, I don't think you need an American agent anymore. You just need to find a local guy that you trust that you can work with directly. You don't need to have two agents, because sometimes the American agent, I mean, he's back in the US, never been to Europe, doesn't know anything about the situation in the country, and then he has to refer to a partner that he had probably met once at the NBA summer league, and they're exchanging their emails, and there's no relationship between them. It's just a business as usual. So when you are building up your career, when you are considering where you are, where you want to go, there are some choices that you need to make. And I think having two agents makes things much more complicated. And finding the right agent that can help you out. I mean, you're not married with the agent for life. So if you have an European agent, you work with him for like 5 years, and then you want to go back and play in G League or in the NBA, then you take another American agent, or you go back to your previous American agent. And I think as soon as you have landed in Europe, that's definitely if I was an American player, that's definitely like some thoughts that I would have. I will put a plan together and say what I'm going to do, what I want to do now, and where I'm going to stand and where I'm going to be in 3 years. And depending on what your goal is, then you should adjust your relationship with your agent. So yes, the agent, they are obviously important, but yeah, it's sometimes difficult for the player and the agent themselves to understand how the market works and the differences between the countries, and differences between how things are being dealt with in the US and in Europe. So rely on someone that you trust. Plenty of agents. There are referenced at the FIBA website. But that will be my advice. I mean, not that I'm saying the American agent are bad, but just if you're playing in Europe and they are like 10,000 kilometers away, I don't think there is a strong need.
No, I agree. One. They can't balance both from an information insight standpoint. It's just too hard.
I wanted to ask if a players union could help the Britney Griner situation. I mean, there's not a lot of media coverage about it going on right now, and there needs to be, in my opinion, because it's a big deal. You know, she's American, she's female, she's Black, she's a WNBA player, a well-respected player globally. So I know the war going on isn't really playing in her favor.
That's for sure.
But could a players union in Russia, or even in France, help try to get her home? Because I think it's just been way overdue for something to happen for her.
Yeah. So first of all, having a player association in Russia, I think it's quite a challenge. And I will support any Russian player want to set up a player association, because the context of the country, the situation, the way sports is run, organized, etc. I think it's probably one of the biggest challenges in a lifetime to set up a player association in Russia, like a really independent one, I would say. But I do believe that there are player associations that can help, and potentially not a basketball player association. I'll give you a perfect example. When the Americans left Afghanistan and the Taliban took over the country, he left. I mean, a lot of athletes in Afghanistan were just left alone. And under the Sharia, you're not supposed to do any kind of sport. So they had to either hide in Pakistan, or they just have to pretend that they were not athletes anymore. And at the time, a good friend of mine was the head of FIFPro, which is the World Football Player Association, like not American football, like soccer.
Yeah.
They somehow managed and organized to flew out of the country athletes. So they organized like charter flights and managed to get some athletes out of the country and dispatch them around a few countries in Europe. It would. And they were not football players. One team was the women national team, like football national team, but other athletes joined, and they helped so many guys over the time. And I had a discussion with them a few weeks ago, because I was contacted by a friend of mine who's a journalist in Switzerland, and he was trying to help the Afghanistan. It was the skiing, like the skiers flew out of Pakistan because they were stuck in the mountains and they could not go back home. They have been threatened by the regime and so on. So he was like, oh, what can we do? Can you help? So through my contact, we've been trying to organize something. The Olympic Committee was also trying to help the athletes to fly out of the country. So I would say, coming back to your question, yes, it's possible, but you need a political will. I'm pretty sure the WNBPA is doing something right now. I'm pretty sure they're on top of things, especially because it's one of their members, especially because the preseason is starting shortly for the players. So I'm pretty sure they're on top of it. I haven't checked, but I could ask. But then she's literally stuck where no one wants to be stuck ever in his life. You're in between countries that hate each other and in the middle of the war. So I hope she's doing fine. I mean, I hope she's okay. I think the All-Star game, the NBA All-Star game, helped a lot to explain the situation and say that there is a problem. I don't know. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Player Association could have a say at FIBA again. You have to go through your governing body here and say, well, let's do something. Like same thing with the Athletes Commission. They need to do something because it's one of their members. It's we're the same family here, and you could use any trick you can, any string you can pull to make sure that she's doing okay. Because I don't even know if the American government can check up on her from time to time to make sure that she's okay, if she's allowed to a phone call, for instance. So yeah, it's a really worrying situation from my own perspective. And yeah, I'm pretty sure like Player Association and few Player Association together, even if you have never played in Spain or France or Italy or wherever, could say something, could do something, could write, could and try to influence the outcome of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's the question I had.
Yeah, that's a great question, because that's she's been in prison for more than a month now, and and I don't see any sign of her being released. So that's really worrying. When you're a professional athlete, you cannot train, and you're living in like probably terrible condition that you don't want to experience during your career.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it's I can't imagine. We don't even know what she's going through. We don't even know what type of care, they're providing. But I think it's just something that like it's a wake up call. I think even the situation in Ukraine, players trusting the team of saying one thing like this is bigger than basketball. Like you need to be safe.
And I think Kyle Hines is one of your main guy working with you. I saw his profile on the website, and he played in CSKA Moscow for quite some time, and he's a renowned player. I think if he wants a Russian passport, they will grant him one based on what he has accomplished with the team, and maybe through his network. The people we know in Moscow, you could also do something as Weeble.
Yeah.
Even if
that's Kyle. That's his network. Like it is not Jori. Like everybody, that's his network. Despite his support for Weevolve and what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish, that's where like you said, it goes back to. There's, different things. There's politics. There's, how does that affect him and his future and what he's building and being, his brand right now. What does that do to say I'm about to go? Does that destroy his brand? Maybe he gets more of the people on his side. Mm-hmm. But what's more important? Power of the people.
Yeah, and maybe he's doing something in the background that nobody knows. Which is
maybe
good as well, and will have an impact.
Yeah,
but you have to tap in this like really high profile athletes and make sure that it's I'm not going to give you the story of John Carlos and the Mexico Olympics, but he put his career on the line because he stood on the podium and to fight for his rights as a person and as a human being. And I understand that for every other athlete, it's complicated to do that. and that's why I was I was there to take the hit instead of them when I was working for the union, because I don't mind. I'm not playing anymore. I don't even touch the basketball. So if I'm being insulted by agents or by team owners or by a government representative, then who cares? I mean, that's what I'm being paid for. So I understand that sometimes it's complicated, but I mean, recognizing the power of the group and the group to do something, and especially for the situation of Britney Griner, I think it can have a huge impact if they all together, the WNBPA, the EuroLeague Player Association, and some individuals, especially American player, or also like high-profile female player playing in Europe, American or European, are taking a stand. I mean, if you remember the situation with Belarus, you had this basketball player was also put in jail for quite some time.
She was arrested. She was in jail for a while.
And I think the public opinion and everybody, so it was Belarus, and I don't know if Belarus is worse or better than Russia, but to me it's close from this being the same,
right?
Especially regarding freedom of expression. But the people, they all together, they put out press release and say it was not fair, and she got released at some point. So yeah, it was not a war at the same time, which makes things a little bit different. But I'm pretty sure if the WNBPA organize people, ask people in Europe to be active or proactive in that field, trying to help out, there is but at the same time, you cannot undermine the political aspect of things and making sure that they don't want to make too much noise, because sometimes making less noise is better than making too much noise. So that's definitely an open conversation that players who are interested in the topic and players representatives should have on what's the best angle and what they can do, and if one way or the other they can support what's going on. And that's what happened with the guys in Ukraine right now, because some of them had to take like a 20-hour bus ride to get out of the country, and sometimes it's just complicated because they are bombing airports and stuff like that, and it makes your life miserable because you're stuck in a country where you don't know anyone, you don't speak the language, you don't know what's going on. There is things you see on TV, but there is also things happening in the streets. And you're a foreign person in a foreign country, and it makes things even worse. So because it's hard to understand the dynamic, and if you're not being told, and if you don't pay attention to what's going on in the country, then you're going to be, you can end up facing some problems. And I'll be happy to put some tweets up every day about Britney Griner saying, well, she's been in prison for X number of days. And I think that, just reminding people that she's been there for quite some time, and especially when, I don't know if she's done anything wrong or not, because we'll find out with time, but that's not fair. I mean, you should be, there is justice in every country, and you should be protected by the law and not being subject to the Cold War between the US and Russia.
Right. No, definitely. Before we hop off, I definitely just wanted to get a quick snapshot again. What does a player get? Like, again, I know you're very specific when it comes to the French union. Obviously, different unions offer certain benefits, but if you could just say, all right, players listening, this is what you get when you pay the fee. Also, I think the fees differ depending on the union, but what's a quick country what's a quick snapshot of, hey, you join the union, this is what you get. And of course they've heard some of the stories, but just a quick rundown of like, look, these are the benefits.
Yeah, what you get is the legacy of the guy who's been involved before and who fight for their rights. So if you're able to get an insurance provision, if you have a permanent disability money that comes in, if you have a minimum salary also, then that's because guys fought before you and managed to get that done. So when you're joining a player association, it's looking at your situation right now, looking at what you're getting right now, but it's also looking at the longer picture. Maybe you'll come back to France or to Italy or to Spain or to Germany or in a few years, and when you come back, if the situation of player have improved, then I think that's going to be a win, and you can be associated with that win. It's like I said, it's not easy because there's so many issues, so many things going on, and when you're playing 2 or 3 games a week, sometimes you don't have the time and the opportunity to understand the politics and the current situation. And it's also really hard for a trade unionist to explain the situation in 20 minutes. That a problem that probably took years to arise and took years to negotiate. But at least you have to know that you're going to be well represented. They're going to defend your best interest. The union is not being paid by anyone except the membership fees from their members, which is also a problem because what is the fair amount of membership dues that you should pay in order to get services? And the last thing is that it's pretty much like an insurance. You never know when you're going to need it. Maybe you won't, but maybe at some point you'll do. And I can finish with that story. I think it's a great one. It's a great one. It's a sad one, but a great one. Jawad Williams, who played for North Carolina in college, he played in the NBA in Cleveland. Fantastic guy, like awesome guy. He got caught up in the middle of a big fight with his team in Paris, and he got fired because of that. So that was him. It was Daniel Ewing, and they were a member of the union. So we helped them like quite a lot. Like I think we fight quite fiercely to protect their interest. And I would have never thought that a guy like him will end up in the situation where like he was on TV everywhere. It was a game around Christmas, like a big fight, big brawl, like punches thrown at each other. And I knew the guy personally because I saw him with team visits and so on. But he walked in the office and he was like, "I need your help, guys." And of course he was a member and we gave him help the best we could, even if he got terminated for good reason by the club, because obviously when you're fighting an opponent, you're going to end up with a lot of problems. But I mean, I would have. He played in the NBA, was a member of the Player Association there. He had no interest whatsoever in joining the French Player Association, but he did. And at the end, he benefited from the services. We helped him out with the unemployment rights at the end of the contract. And I think he was quite happy. Now he's playing in Japan, he's writing books, and he's an awesome guy. It's one of the best examples that I can give you is that, he trusted us. He said, well, I understand the added value of having a player association because I played in the NBA. And I think all the guys watching the video right now should look at what the MLBPA in the US have just accomplished. I mean, they were locked down. The lockout lasted for quite some time because the employer wanted to lock out the players. And now what they have achieved with our new collective agreement, I think it's great. It's going in a good direction. They're going to have some work stoppage at some point again, but they agreed on not being paid for some time and fighting for their rights, even if most of them are millionaires. And the situation of the US player playing in Europe, most of the time they are not millionaires. The millionaires, they're just a few. They are playing in the Euroleague. And it's just, two full hand of players making millions of euros every year. The rest, most of them will struggle to get their payments, struggle to understand the market, struggle to understand the law, struggle with their agents, and struggle with their, personal life because, their wives are back home, they are by themselves. It's tough. And sometimes you just need to be able to count on somebody. And you know that when you have the player association, they're going to do counseling, they're going to do mental health support, they're going to do all kinds of things that goes way beyond just your contract, and can provide you help and guidance throughout your career because they are here for you, and at the end of the day they're going to do something in your benefit when you need it. So it's like insurance, you never know when you're going to need it, but just make sure you take it, and if you need anything, just ask, and don't be afraid to ask. If it's counseling, if it's mental health support, if it's help with your transition after your basketball career or your career, just ask, because there are programs, there are people, there are experts working with them, and even if you're American, you can benefit from that. Definitely.
The first step is to tap in. That's the first step, and then everybody collectively.
Just a simple, the simple point for American player: taxes. What do you do with your taxes? I mean, you have to declare taxes in the US, you're paying tax while you're paying taxes in Europe. And how does it work? Just ask. They have advisors, they have people working with them. That's a simple question. Like, solve out your taxes situation. What should I do when I travel from the US to Europe for the first time? What should I do? Because obviously, if you don't deal with it, and if you don't want to deal with it, then you're going to end up with the IRS with a really bad tax situation, and that's not good.
Right. Making sure your tax person knows how to deal with it, because expat tax is different than normal tax back home, and so, or not losing money because they're not filing it the correct way, leaving money on the table. So yeah, it's a number of things. That's a good one start right there.
Ask yourself the question: what should I do with my taxes? And am I doing things right? Just like that, simple. Like, and am I doing something? Just something. Just ask yourself the question.
Right. Well, our phone call time is almost up. It was a good one. I know we probably could talk forever, but definitely just appreciate you and everything you're doing. Just even outside of the union, continuing to be there for players, continuing to be of advice to even us as we evolve, and definitely being a part of the community from an authentic standpoint. So appreciate the time, Jeff, and thanks for hopping on the call.
Thank you. And then, I'll always be with the players. That's why I'm not working for a club or for a league or for a federation. I'm player forever. So I'll be there to support anyone.